Coming up on Nebraska Stories, Chief Standing Bear goes to Washington. A combat vet who was lost in the South Pacific. A small boy with a rare condition finds a new path to his future. And an artist who makes cool art with hot wax.
The U.S. Capitol, September 18, 2019. A new American hero is about to be unveiled in Statuary Hall.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early...
It all began 2 years earlier when the Nebraska legislature voted 2 new heroes into the hall.
Roll call.
Statuary Hall began in 1864 when Congress invited each state to contribute 2 sculptures of prominent citizens from the past. In 1937, the people of Nebraska chose William Jennings Bryan, 3-time presidential candidate, and J. Sterling Morton, founder of Arbor Day. In the year 2000, states were granted the option of replacing one or both of their statues. Nebraska chose to replace both. Writer Willa Cather will take the place of J. Sterling Morton. In place of William Jennings Bryan, artist Ben Victor's sculpture of Ponca Chief Standing Bear.
It's an honor to be here today to recognize a Nebraska hero and one of the most important civil rights leaders in our country that almost nobody knows about. And we hope to be able to correct that today and tell his story.
The story begins in the Ponca homeland in northeast Nebraska. Here, the Niobrara River flows into the Missouri, passing white chalk cliffs sacred to the tribe. A Ponca chief named Standing Bear traveled thousands of miles, many on foot, to return to this place. His whole life has been a struggle for justice.
Great Spirit, God, it's good to pray to you today. We thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing each of us to be here. I ask that you watch over our Ponca people.
The Ponca people have never forgotten their trail of tears when U.S. soldiers with bayonets forced them from their homeland into a place called Indian Territory. 140 years later, they're reenacting that dark moment in history, step by step.
The main thing that they were up against is the unknown. Where are we going? Why are we going here? If you can imagine being sent someplace that far away and not knowing what's going to happen.
What happened was starvation and disease on a reservation in present-day Oklahoma. After the death of his 16-year-old son, Standing Bear and a small clan walked 500 miles back to Nebraska in the dead of winter to keep a promise.
He defied those orders when he was in Oklahoma to come back up here, not only to bury his son's bones, but the blood of his people and the people before him ran in this ground. So there was a bond there, there was a draw there that brought him home.
Going home made Standing Bear a criminal in the eyes of the government. Before he could be free to live where he wanted, he had to prove in court that he was a person under the law.
It is almost unthinkable to us today that it wasn't until 1879 after Standing Bear's trial that Native Americans were declared to be persons for consideration of the law. Chief Standing Bear didn't seek to be a civil rights leader. He simply wanted to bury his dead son on their ancestral homeland. And in doing so, he called forth the essence of human dignity. And he changed the course of history in that transcendent moment when he raised his hand and said,
I am a man. The same God made us both.
It's that moment in court, just before Standing Bear speaks, that sculptor Ben Victor wanted to capture in bronze. He began with a clay model and shipped it to Lincoln, Nebraska, where people could watch as he worked on the final touches.
It has been just a packed studio every single day, and it's gotten so much attention for the project and for Chief Standing Bear. That spirit of Chief Standing Bear is still alive because he's still having influence over all of these people. And that influence is growing and thriving. It's not shrinking and dying. And so that's why projects like this are so important.
From this clay model, Ben Victor cast 3 9-foot-tall bronze statues. The first was unveiled in Lincoln's Centennial Mall. The second stands on a hill in the Ponca homeland, where Standing Bear died in 1908.
He was my great-great-great-grandfather, and that's how I knew him growing up. He was family. Just being on the grounds, having the cemetery close by, having Standing Bear's statue up on the hill, I just feel so close to him. He's here in spirit.
Now with the statue we enshrine in bronze our promise to build the better, more just future of which Chief Standing Bear dreamed. And we display that promise proudly in the U.S. Capitol so that thousands of people, everyone who comes through here, will see the statue and learn the story and be inspired and be challenged. From every part of the world, people can bear witness to it. From all over America, people can see it every day for generations, perhaps 7 generations at least to come. Thank you all for making this day so special for the Congress, more importantly, for the United States of America. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you so much.
This is our crew right here. The radioman, a fellow by the name of O'Neill, Scuda, the pilot, and myself.
It's been more than 3/4 of a century, but memories of early 1943 come easily for John Busalis.
I've been very flattered a couple of times when I asked people to pick it out. They picked me out as a pilot.
He was a 23-year-old Navy radioman and a gunner in World War II, stationed aboard the USS Sewanee in the middle of the South Pacific. On February 27th, Busalis and his crewmates began what was supposed to be a routine anti-sub patrol. They were about 2 hours into the flight when their engine gave out.
The pilot came on the intercom that we were going to go down. We landed at sea. A lot of people have the impression that landing on water is kind of a soft landing. However, this is not true. It's like hitting a brick wall.
Uninjured by the hard landing, it took less than a minute for Busalis and pilot B.J. Scuda to get out of the sinking plane. They quickly deployed a life raft and grabbed an emergency survival kit.
We had a hard time getting the radioman done because a Navy man couldn't swim. He was reluctant to jump in the water, but he knew that jumping in the water was the best of the 2 options that he had.
In the distance, they could see an island, so they started paddling. Progress was slow, and there was no sign of anybody coming to rescue them.
trying to help things along. The pilot and I got into the water and tried to push the raft. And that was all well and good until we saw some shark dorsals, and we got back in the raft in a quick hurry.
After 4 days of paddling and nearly getting pulled back out into the open sea, the three men landed on the rocky coast of Erromango, a remote island about 30 miles long and 19 miles wide, more than 1,000 miles from the east coast of Australia. They had 7 ounces of drinking water left.
A short ways back from the shoreline, there was this lava rock, and there was some water in that didn't have the salt water in it. We got some of that, and we just rested. We just plopped down and regained our strength before we started walking.
After days of sun and saltwater exposure, Busalis' feet were swollen and raw.
The shoes here, where I had to cut them, my feet were so swollen.
The men explored what they could, avoiding sharp rocks and coral snakes. They had run out of food on the life raft.
March the 4th, that's Thursday, in cave, treating our wounds and resting up. Began to get hungry.
Busalis reads from a report he wrote in 1943.
Half-mile inland, we find oranges, limes, papaya, all very nourishing.
After 4 days of wandering, Busalis and his crewmates spotted an island native out looking for a lost pig. He took them back to his village, where they were fed chicken stew and given more fruit, including pineapple he'll never forget.
That pineapple vine ripened was the sweetest pineapple, the most tasty pineapple I'd ever eaten or have eaten since.
A day later, the natives led Busalis and the 2 others to the other side of the island, where an Australian man named S.O. Martin had a cattle ranch and a small house.
We got a little bit disturbed. When he first saw us, he started to laugh. It kind of bothered us a little bit, but then he told us that his hobby was collecting American airmen, because there was others that had cracked up there before we did.
Busalis, Skuta, and O'Neill spent the next 25 days recovering at the ranch. Busalis came down with malaria, which the rancher was able to treat. He spent his 24th birthday on the island, reading books and riding horses.
If it wasn't for that native being there, there would have been hardship. There's no doubt about it. But we had all the comforts of home.
Soon, a supply boat stopped by the island and later notified a radio operator on a nearby island that there were Navy airmen stranded there.
The island that you went to get picked up was?
Tanna.
Tanna, and that is just south of there a little bit, is that correct?
Yeah.
A couple of days later, Busalis, Skuta, and O'Neill were picked up by seaplanes and returned to their carrier, 1 month after they had disappeared into the South Pacific. The experience changed Busalis.
I don't let things bother me like I used to before, you know? There's just too many good people without worrying about the bad ones, and that helped me in that way. I didn't get all real uptight like I used to.
After the war, Busalis returned home to Minnesota and eventually moved to Nebraska, arriving in Lincoln in 1961. He opened a well-known restaurant and golf club and later turned the business over to his son, George. His sister-in-law, Helen Busalis, was Lincoln's mayor from 1975 to 1983. John Busalis celebrated his 100th birthday in 2019. He's had some time to reflect.
There were a lot of heroes back at that time.
A lot of heroes.
He was one of them.
I don't know about that.
He doesn't talk much about his experience in 1943. He knows many others had it much worse than he did. But he did learn a valuable lesson about the human spirit.
The will to survive is very strong. Very strong.
Leo is such a sweet boy. He is a joy to be around, full of energy, and he likes to be independent.
He surprises us every day with something new he does, makes us laugh constantly. Just overall a great, funny kid and has his own personality. In 2014, I was in my third year teaching job at St. John's. They hired a new second grade teacher and she caught my eye, and after a couple months we started dating, and then a year and a half later we were married.
It was a healthy pregnancy and we had the regular ultrasounds and checkups, and nothing seemed abnormal. Even from the ultrasounds, everything came back clear and good news.
With this being our first child, everything was new, and just the uncertainty and just overall excitement though, ready to begin this new journey.
We didn't turn to having a lot of concern until a couple hours after he was born.
Well, Leo was born with a rare form of proximal femoral focal deficiency. We call it PFFD. Leo's femur is almost non-existent. He has just a little bit of a femur, a tibia that has two different growth plates. I don't know that I've really ever seen that before with just PFFD. Usually the tibia in PFFD is relatively normal. The question is, how are we going to make him as functional and as useful as we can down the line?
Our specialist had very few cases that he has dealt with, so he recommended that if we wanted to seek out a second opinion, he gave us a specialist at Shriners Hospital in Minneapolis. We made our first trip up there and met with the staff and the specialist, and we just felt at peace there, walking in to the waiting room and seeing those children with prosthetics, just a feeling of calmness and knowing that we were in the right place with the right people.
They took us in with open arms. They were so positive. They gave us all kinds of gifts, and it was a really positive experience.
Shriners is a pretty unique situation where the majority of our patients that come here, it's a very unique thing for them. They're one usually in their whole town. And when they can come here and they can see other kids that have the same thing and they start to play with other kids who are, missing the same arm or missing the same leg, it gives them a sense of belonging and acceptance.
They welcomed Katie and Tony and Leo right from the beginning and let them know that they're not alone.
You just think of all these what ifs. What if Leo can't run? What if he can't walk? But having a plan and knowing that he can have a prosthetic and he'll be able to do normal kid things gives me hope and peace.
Giving them that reassurance that, hey, we know what they can do, and for the most part, they'll do everything that their peers do.
So there's different roadmaps, but on this patient, on Leo, he has a very short form, in fact, the shortest form of PFFD. So we're just waiting to see how this develops for a little bit longer and then make some definitive plans.
In Leo's case, we'll probably some type of foot ablation and using that tibial segment as a new femur and then placing a mechanical or a microprocessor knee underneath that structure when he gets older, and then walking like an above knee amputee. So that's typically what we're trying to produce as an adult PFFD patient, is something that's more like an above the knee amputee.
To have a roadmap put in place, I would definitely say encouraging and more confident ourselves.
In the beginning it was hard for him, but you wouldn't even notice when you put his leg on. He doesn't even seem like it's anything different than normal. And he always likes to go, and it doesn't hold him back. Seeing your kid go through something that you never went through, a hardship that you didn't go through, it was hard for me to see. And so I think it's helped me grow and know that it'll be okay, and I'm here to support him even though he's going through something really hard and I don't know really anything about it. I can give him love still and help him through.
It keeps us close.
Yeah.
We need each other to get through this, and just growing our relationship and and being there for Leo, our #1 priority.
It's just been a really huge blessing how Shriners has worked in our lives, and that I'm really thankful for.
In that few moments where I was conscious and knew I was badly injured, but could think, I thought, if this is it, I didn't really know what the outcome was at that time, what is it I would have regretted? And the thing I would have regretted was not investing in my own creative life. Ah, look at this. Whoa! I knew immediately this would become my medium for life. Come on! Okay, wax and resin getting melted. Encaustic is the use of hot pigmented wax, and it's the oldest and most durable painting medium. It's considered one of the most sophisticated of art mediums, and it's now coming back into favor with contemporary artists. It really is, for many encaustic artists, an instant love affair. And I think what it is it's the naturalness of the materials that you use, and the smell of those things, and the feel of wax. It's just very seductive. And what is it about it? It's just sensuous. It's just so captivating. The word encaustic is from the Greek word meaning to burn in, using heat to get the layers of wax to adhere to each other. You may have 50, 60 layers of wax, but because of the process of heating, or what we call fusing, those layers become a solid piece, and they're very archival and can last 2,500 years. The culture that really made encaustic a part of our art history repertoire was the Egyptians, because they used it to do the mummy portraits. And those were done wax on wood, and they have lasted over 2,500 years. 600 of them survive into contemporary times. They're scattered all over the world, but most major Egyptian collections will have one of what is called the Fayum portraits, because they were found in the Fayum Valley in Egypt. Making the decision to say, I am an artist, and assuming that identity is both exhilarating but also a little intimidating. But at some point you really have to put yourself out there. The thing you may think is your very best work, other people may ignore, and they may respond to something that is not maybe what you consider your best work, but it's okay. Good art allows that to happen. People see things in your art that you had no idea, and that is a great feeling. Like some of my recent pieces that have to do with candy and cupcakes, people say, that just makes me smile. And I thought, what's wrong with that? And people tell me all the associations they have with it. To me, they're very simple pieces, but the people bring their own meaning to the work, and that's what, as an artist, it's so fun to hear what people think and how they respond. Now, generally in Nebraska, people are so nice, they're not going to respond negatively. They're just like, ignore it. I am still always drawn to the Nebraska landscape. You know, growing up under the big sky in Wahoo, Nebraska, where the land is flat and very fertile, it's hard to get away from that big sky and that flat earth and the rows of crops. And so sometimes even in my abstract work, I'll see the influence of that process, the sky always changing, you know, it's like, because in encaustic, the wax is always changing as you apply heat to it, and it's not always under your control. And it's sort of like the sky. We aren't controlling the clouds in the sky. They're, you know, you just sort of capture a glimpse at a particular time. That's what I feel like I do in wax. I just capture this moment. It's kind of like you go into a state, which has been well documented, the creative state, where you're sort of suspended from reality in some ways, and you're just going with it. I would say that only in the last year has the movement reached critical mass. So I'm very pleased to have been associated with the movement early on and to watch it rise. The International Encaustic Artists was formed in 2007. I'm now on the board of directors of that. So that tells you how recent the organizing of this particular use of this medium, the teaching of it, the promoting of it, exhibitions of it, has really just gone mainstream recently. I'm always after the new frontier, but I'm not all that attached to my products. I'm more attached to the process, and I've always got more ideas than I can actually execute. So I love to just go on to the next one.
Watch more Nebraska Stories on our website, Facebook, and YouTube. Nebraska Stories is funded by the Margaret and Martha Thomas Foundation.